Now, when I got to the long patterns here, okay, so you have these long patterns. You're going to be starting on a 6, and you can't get this 7. It doesn't matter on the G pentatonic, because the G pentatonic, the G-shaped pentatonic, or the key of G pentatonic, you don't have to reach this 7 until you go to the 5th. So move it down. We're moving the pattern down now. So we're going to have just shorts on the bottom here. When the pattern goes down, we go to the 5th. The 5th of G is the D pattern. Right here, here's our D pentatonic. 6, 7, 2, 3, 5, 6. Now we need to access below the fret nut. We can't do that for that D pentatonic, which is the 5th of the G string shape. So we're going to play the long there. That's the whole thing about the long patterns. There's plenty of notes we can't reach. Okay? So that's the name of that tune. Back up here on the Ionian fretboard. So why is it the Ionian fretboard? Because we have root 2, 3, 5, and 6 highlighted on the pattern, so we can see the pattern. Down here, this is the Mixolydian fretboard, starting from 6. So it's the Aeolian, on the Mixolydian fretboard is 5, 6, 7, 2, 3. Remember from over here. So we have the Mixolydian fretboard, 5, 6, 7, 2, 3. Okay, and then we have the Ionian fretboard, root 2, 3, 5, 6, and then we have the Lydian fretboard, the 4th is 4, 5, 6, root 2. Okay, here's Ionian, and here's Mixolydian, like that. Now, in the previous chart, the only difference between the Dorian and the Phrygian, which is your minors, is the triad itself. D minor is 2, 4, 6. The third minor is 3, 5, 7, which would be E minor in the key of C, and in the key of C, 6 root 3, but it doesn't matter. It could be the key of E. Okay, so the 6th of E is there, right there, 6 root, and then the 3rd of E. Alright, that would be the minor. With the Phrygian, this 3, 5, 7 is contained in the Mixolydian triad, the 5th pentatonic, and this 2, 4, 6 is contained in the 4th pentatonic. So I left them as the pentatonics, but I didn't leave you with nothing here. What we have here for each of these boxes here in chart 500, the mighty, this is a half G minor shape to an E minor shape. Okay, so here's our E minor shape, is 6, 2, 4 right there. Alright, so the key of C would be 6, 2, 4. Alright, but we're starting down here in root right here, because I have my root here in the key of C. So I'm going to have to bar this second and just play an E minor there. Okay. By the way, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe, share perhaps, and follow the instructions below the video to access Andy's free guitar chart videos group on Facebook. Let's move forward here. So we've got a half a G minor shape down here by the root, because remember, we've got a G minor shape, D minor here. Okay, so it'd be 2, 4, and then 6 would be up here below the 7. Here's a whole step, in imaginary. That would be our G minor shape up there, and then 4, 6, 2 is the top. So there's the top half of that G minor shape, D minor. First inversion, D minor. It's an easy chord up there. It's nice. As you see, if you start on the 2 here, which is where your Dorian would start, on the long pattern, you would get a nice easy chord up there, 4/6 to the bar. G minor shaped D minor. It goes like this. Okay. It's kind of a tough chord, but it's a fun chord to play once you get used to it. And of course, you can play the top or the bottom of it. So let's move on. So this is chart 500. Okay. And like I was saying, if I just colored the 2/4/6 and got rid of the 5 and the root, then we wouldn't be able to see the pentatonic structure that the Dorian is contained in. So now let's move ahead to chart 501 to finish the lesson. The reason why this chart is arranged the way it is, we have the Ionian in the middle, move the pattern up for the 4th, move the pattern down for the 5th. Okay, so one more time with the patterns. Why did I do that? Because the long pentatonic is just root 2, 3, 5, 6, root 2, 3, 5, 6, root 2, 3, 5, 6. That's the long Ionian pentatonic. Root 2, 3, 5, 6. That's it. Now the long, well, let's just talk about moving the pattern up. So if you want to move this pattern up, we're going to have 2 whole steps, all right, going to the 5/6. Right there's the 2 whole steps going to the 5/6. This came in to fill in underneath it. Okay, so when we move an E pattern up, it's the root E string shape. Let's look at it. If we have to explain something, we're going to look at it. Here's the root 2, 3 string shape. That's ER. Okay, the A5 string shape is 5, 6, 7. But in the root major pent, we're just looking at root 2, 3, 5, 6. So these are the basic pentatonic shapes that we're just going to be moving up and moving down. And the reason why I'm moving the patterns up and moving them down is because I couldn't learn these. I didn't want to have to learn these separately. They were kind of complicated, and it still works for the short patterns. Okay, on this particular fretboard, by the way, we have the short patterns, even in the E box. Okay, so let's look at E, the Locrian box. So now I usually put the capo on the 7 for the on the E rather for the Locrian box. So this is where you're tuned. Okay. So the Ionian pentatonic is still in that box. As a matter of fact, the first half here, this E cross A cross C, is fully contained. We have the E pentatonic. Okay, we move this thing up. Now look at this, short, long, long. Here's our short, long, long. But now we got to hit the tuning warp there. So we got to move the 5/6 over, and that becomes an A shape. But I know the A shape by heart. Supposedly, right? Now we move the pattern down, so we have short, long, long. We're moving it down now. We have the 2 longs right there to a C, because the 5th of E is C in cage. It's not a B. It goes back to the C shape. The 5th of E, here's an E shape. Here's the 4th of it. Now the 5th is a C shape. Okay? So the 5th of the E shape is the C shape. The 4th of the E shape is the A shape. So we've moved the pattern down now, and it becomes the C shape. So I knew that by memorization. I just knew the C pentatonic. Right here, with the long E pentatonic, okay, so we're going to, I'm just going to do it in yellow, but actually we should do it in some sort of a Locrian color. You know, it's already outlined. It's right here. Okay, that's not the long one. This is the short one right here, okay? So that's very good, Andy. Right here is the long pentatonic, the long Locrian pentatonic is actually with this particular box, it starts on the 7. So the peculiarity about the Locrian box, or you can look at it as an advantage, is the short pentatonic and the long pentatonic can be played from the same box when you're doing the root pentatonic. Alright, the same thing with the Phrygian box. Let's look at it. Alright, we're covering a difficult box here. It was a bad example, but we're covering it. With the Phrygian box and the Locrian box here, and this is from the root keyboard. We know it's the root keyboard because we have root 2, 3, 5, 6 highlighted, the root pentatonic. The whole fretboard, no matter what note we're starting from. Okay, so the Phrygian starts from the 3. Well, we can see here the long and the short, we both start from a 3. On the Locrian, the long and the short both start from a 7. Okay, the 7. The Phrygian's the 3rd. That's a 7th chord. Okay, kind of the Burt Bacharach chord, you know. So then we have, well, that's if it's a minor 7th, I think. But then we have, you know, if it's a major 7th, it's more like Tin Man, you know. Okay, the Tin Man song. Alright, so the Lydian is different, but it's the same as the other cage because the Lydian is primarily an E-shaped cage, just moved up starting from the 4th. So you're just taking the same E shape in the E box and moving it up.